I'm just going to talk about a hike that I did, and I'm going to focus on a couple of areas that I thought were interesting to kind of explore the specific passages. So, I don't know if this is going to be a little too granular maybe in a couple of spots, but the basic hike from between Clear Creek and Asbestos Canyon is something that I did earlier this year with a friend, and we were going to originally go to Unkar, but we ended up turning around a little earlier, and you'll see why, or I'll talk about why. But just to orient, if we're down here somewhere, Phantom Ranch, everyone I'm sure knows where, and Clear Creek, there's the trail that goes out to the campsite at Clear Creek, and I'm not really going to cover this part of the hike, obviously, but I'm going to focus on the section between Clear Creek and Asbestos Canyon. And so before we start to the photos, let me just, since this is my only map slide, I'm just going to show you a little bit where I'm going to be, where you'll be seeing the photos. So if you've been out to Clear Creek, you probably have seen some of these, but if not, you can hike a short ways down to a junction with the east arm of Clear Creek. And just, oh, by the way, there's actually a really great agave roasting pit right there. If you ever down there, apropos this morning's presentation by Ellen. There's a really big one there, and it still has charcoal in it and everything. It's really easy to see that that's what it is. A short distance up this arm, there's a ravine that goes to the south and gets you onto the Tonto Plateau, or platform here, north of the Howlands Butte. That's the Howlands Butte. There's multiple ways to do this, but the way we chose to do it is we're going to go around the Howlands Butte and into this little drainage here, that's 83 Mile Canyon, and around the head of that, above the Tapeats. Then we're going to go around Hawkins Butte, and we're going to go into this drainage here that doesn't have a name, but it has an informal name, which is Disappointment Canyon. Doug Nearing tells me that, I think maybe Mike Mahaney coined this name, but Doug tells me the reason that Mike or whoever coined the name is that this is the canyon where the people coming from Clear Creek to Vishnu come around and see it and realize they're not going to make it to Vishnu. So it's Disappointment Canyon. And then from there, you go around Hall Butte to Vishnu. Then from here, you go across a saddle between Newberry Butte and Krishna Shrine, and you go and make your way around a couple more little drainages here. Then you get into the upper part of Asbestos Canyon. Our original goal, for what it's worth, was to continue over Shiva Temple Saddle, go to the Tabernacle and over to the river and over on up to Unkar. This we did not do. We only got as far as that spot right there, and we went back. But we still had a great trip and a great time. So now you know where we're going to go, so let's take a look. This is me and my friend Jane Gagney, and our spouses are very understanding when we go off on a 12-day trip together. I don't know why they're so happy to have us out of the house, but that's the way it goes. So here's Jane, we're just getting started. I think we went from down the South Kaibab Trail and over to Clear Creek on the first day. And so I'm just going to pick up the hike there. So here's Jane coming up the route from the east arm of Clear Creek up to the Tonto, and this is sometimes referred to as the Yak Route. Don't know why. It's a deer track, or deer trail, and Harvey wrote about it in his book, and it's very manageable. You can see that it gets travel and all that. Brings you up through just a nice sort of steep ravine here and gets you up onto the Tonto Plateau. So now I'm just kind of zipped around Howlands Butte, and you can see Angel's Gate here. So it's familiar formations on this hike. Since we're not really covering very many miles, we're always looking at stuff we know from just hiking in the general corridor area. So that's Angel's Gate. Now, especially with the poor lighting in here, it's probably hard to tell, but there's Jane. And I just included this slide to emphasize the wide open expanses of the Tonto Plateau, even on the north side. And this is 83 Mile Canyon, and this is just a big old stroll through the Tonto just to get around the head of that. There's been some talk about water management today, and this hike was no exception. If you're not going to get to Vishnu, where there is a spring, and you're not sure if there will be water in Disappointment Canyon or elsewhere, it's a long haul with carrying a lot of water, and that's kind of what we were doing, but we were hoping, because it was the spring, that we would find water. Well, I was starting to get really nervous by the time we got to 83 because the first few little Tonto ravines that we crossed, Tapeats ravines that we crossed were all dry, and I was just sure there would have been water in them. Finally, I spied a glint. You can't really tell, but this is down below the level of the rim of the Tapeats quite a bit, but I scampered down here to this sad little puddle, and you can see I'm actually using a rock to hold my filter inlet hose so that it will stay submerged in this like half-inch deep puddle. But nevertheless, we got a couple liters out of this, and it was enough to kind of allay any concerns we had that day. So then coming around 83 Mile and you get onto the east side of it, there's a break there that George Steck wrote about. There's an alternate route to here, which I've done, which comes from the river just upstream of Clear Creek, up a ravine and goes around and gets you into 83 Mile, and then you can hike up to this break. And this break is key if you're going in that route, because this lets you get up onto the Tonto. So here I just took the opportunity to take a photo looking down because it's a little bit dramatic. It's a fun little thing. It's just sporty enough to be fun, but I'm not a climber. I don't have any kind of skills. I don't even follow good climbers the way Tom does, but something like this is just sporty. So here I am down a little bit farther down, and Jane took this photo. This is one of the arms of 83 Mile. Here we are looking, again, this is the drainage of 83 Mile looking, this would be the river, the inner gorge there. Here I am, and the cool thing about this little route is that when you get up to the top where it gets climby, you climb up into a space that's only a couple, 3 feet high under an overhang. You got to kind of climb up and get on your belly under the overhang and then scoot out towards the edge to where you can stand up. So I'm scooting out towards the edge here, and this is the place this is where I'm on my belly in the other picture. So I took this picture and I kind of faked it into black and white in the computer just because this is kind of close to a picture that's in George Steck's book of this same spot. It's not exactly, but it's really close to it, and so you can see if you're going up, you come up a slump and you get up onto this little thing, then you kind of just climb up this thing here. So it's just fun. So that was sort of, fun spot number one on this trip. Now we camped. We didn't, not only did we not get from Clear Creek to Vishnu, we didn't even get from Clear Creek to Disappointment Canyon in a day, but we weren't really trying that hard. So we camped on the ridge just east of 83 Mile, and that's the sunrise photo the next morning, and that's the river down there. So it's really a spectacular spot like so many spots along the inner gorge. There's just a really big agave that we spied. And now here we are, and this is Disappointment Canyon, or so named, and you are going to get there, you have some kind of funky geology going on here. I don't know or recall enough geology to be specific about it, but there's a couple of choices here, and Steck writes about something a little sportier going directly down because we're going to cross and go up the other side. But rather than doing that, I took the advice from Doug Nearing's website and went over this little hump, came in back here, and then you go behind this block. So if you can see that block, in the shade behind it here, there's a ramp that goes up and around behind it, and that gets you back down into the drainage. That's just a close-up of the block. So the route is right through there. There's a big pour-off here, which is why you need to know this. Also looking across, once you're down into the drainage, the exit is right up this ravine here, and once up there, you can do whatever you want, and we chose to go out and around. So here we are looking at that same bypass spot. So Disappointment Canyon, you get in the drainage. We walked on down here, and sure enough, there was water at the top of the pour-off here because it's really shaded, so the water is going to last longer. And there's a pour-off hiding in this little shady spot here, which is why you follow this ramp of whatever formation we have here. You just follow this ramp right on up and over behind this block and back down. Here's Jane on the ramp. You can see how beautiful it is. There's your drain, there's your stream bed. You just walk right up on here, and it's just like a sidewalk right on up there, so that's cool. Now we're looking at the exit ravine again. It just goes on up there, I think, unless I'm misoriented here. So here's Jane going up the exit ravine, nice and blocky, kind of a typical for such things in the canyon, and not terribly aggressive. And then you get on this really cool little ridge, walking back out towards the river. Now we've kind of got a tip from Della to stay deer high. It's shorter that way. So this was Jane's first experience going deer high. I think she might do it again. But this is in the Muab, obviously. And while I share Todd Martin's love of the Muab as a formation in general, there are places like this where it's kind of a lot of loose stuff where it's a little more exciting. But nevertheless, it was indeed shorter going, because you stay high, the distance is a lot shorter around all these points. So there's Jane cruising through the deer high route. And finally, we're around into the drainage of Vishnu Canyon here. So now we're looking over the rim, and there's the big bend in Vishnu. And I came out here a month before this trip and scouted out here. Dennis had given a tip that there was a miner's cabin in Vishnu somewhere. He was kind of mum on the exact location. So I came out here with binoculars and scouted for it and found it down there. We'll get to that later. Anyhow, get into the west side of Vishnu, and there's a reliable spring that flows out here. I think Jane's probably, well, I think she was in that picture. But anyway, there's a reliable spring. So we, in hindsight, not so smartly, camped on the ridge instead of camping lower down. And here I am being super clever. I wanted to have my trekking poles, which normally I use for holding my tent up, but we were going to do a day hike, so I made these tent poles out of some fallen stalks that I found. And then it got windy and these things rubbed holes in my tent, so don't do that. So here we are down in that west arm drainage. And Dennis, you might want to close your eyes, because this is the end of the shortcut route coming from Clear Creek. And Dennis had a mishap up there recently. But we were interested in exploring up here. Actually, and by the way, not to rub it in, but I think that this is about a week before you were up there. So this was right before Dennis arrived on the scene. So let's see, there's Jane. We're just kind of poking up this arm of Vishnu to see, where the water comes from and what's going on. So you can see that there's water. There's our tents. And there they are again. And now we're also eyeballing the next thing we're going to go through, which this is the saddle of Newberry Butte. So Newberry's over here. We'll get to that again. So now here we are, and here's that same drainage. This is a photo taken at a different time, but you can see where we went. So we hiked on up this thing a little ways, and then because we were kind of curious about this shortcut we'd heard about, but we got to here and looked up at all of this and decided we had come the right way, even though it was a lot longer, going all the way around the Howlands Butte and all that nameless canyon and everything to get here. But if you just come straight over from Clear Creek, you can go along the top of the red wall and just drop straight down in here, I guess, do it in a day. Now, this is that same drainage, and this is the bed of Vishnu Creek proper. And at the very end, it comes down through I think it's the Tapeats here, and it pours off, and it's a really pretty spot. And it's, again, just what I like. Sporty enough to be fun, but not so sporty as to be truly dangerous. So you hike down the stream bed, and you can come down here and go around, and you can get into this. If you don't care about scenery, you can just go up here and come straight down this thing, but this is a pretty little stream bed, so it's more fun to go that way. When you're at that point, take a look across. If you're ever doing this, take a look across, because right opposite you, there's another exit from Vishnu, this being Vishnu, and this is how you get up to continue to the east. And Ned pointed out how the geological map was helpful in finding the faults and everything. As far as I could tell, at least as far as the map is concerned, there's no specific fault here, and there just happens to be this breakdown that works like a perfect ramp to get up out of the steep-walled Vishnu. Here's Jane coming around. That's that same point there. Here's Jane coming around the sporty but still safe route. So right below that, you come down right here. And just downstream, there's this fabulous overhang, and if you can see Jane in the shadows, there's an overhang camp here. I'm sure it gets a lot of use. Like I said, I was here a month prior. I'd walked right past this thing, never even saw it, because why would I see a giant stone wall 10 feet away from the stream bed, right? I was more interested in finding that cabin. So I just rushed right by here and walked right past with no clue. But anyway, we found this, and it came in real handy later on. Okay, so we continue. And here we are. Okay, so now this is all day hike. still from that same point. So we went ahead and headed up Vishnu towards the high saddle to Ankar. And this is the high saddle at the upper end of Vishnu that would take you over into the upper end of Ankar. This is the view looking back down from there. So our tents, if we were to be able to see them, would probably be right about there. And the overhang camp is like right below our tents, so yeah, where we should have been. And you could see possibly that some weather's coming in here. But nevertheless, it's gorgeous. It's a typical, it's not typical, but it's a very pretty little Tapeats slot with just fun little walking and occasional climbing. And this is cool. I just like this because you got in a red wall, and it's just sort of looming over this Tapeats Narrows. It's rather scenic here. So, not pictured, we moved our camp down to the overhang. And this is what it's like when you overhang camp. You're in a really nice, tight little canyon, but just a little bit of sky peeking out. There we are. Again, I'm not quite sure why this picture is here, just there's Angel's Gate again. So here is the Newberry Butte saddle that I showed a little while ago. And so we're now trying to puzzle this out, because obviously you've got to cross here, and we had, again, from Doug's write-up, that there was something a little bit sketchy up in here. We weren't quite sure which way he went and what was sketchy, so I'll reassure you if you ever plan on doing this. It turned out there was at least 2 or 3 ways, none of which was all that sketchy to go through here, although you could sort of see why they might be seeming sketchy depending on how heavy your pack was. But so here's Newberry Butte, there's the saddle. You can probably tell from this photo we're already higher than the saddle. We just came up this slope, and we ended up going around this way and then walking down the back side of it to the saddle. But you can also stay low, and you can come up here, and in the shadows where unfortunately we can't see, unless I have a close-up of it, yeah, I still can't see it. You can walk along a slope here, and then there's just kind of a little walk up here that gets you up onto the saddle. It's very doable. Another view of it. And that walk up would be like down there. So there we are on the back side of it, and we're headed for the saddle, just exploring. We're not on our way to Asbestos yet. And there we are one more time, and that's where you would go if you wanted to do that other little low route. Oh, well, here's an even better look at it, finally. This is the saddle right up there. There's the little drop down, and you can see plenty of wear in the slope here, so obviously backpackers use this. And there you are. So on the way back, now we're looking back down at Vishnu Creek, and there's a fabulous route, and you just go right along this ridge here. It's gorgeous, and it's super fast once you get to this point, and then you just go back down here and right down into the drainage. So it's really quick getting back and forth. Here's Jane coming down the ridge, really nice and fast walking, compared to a lot of the things that you see, a lot of the cactus fields on the Tonto. So now we're going to make our way over to Asbestos the next day. So here we are. Let's see. Should be looking at Asbestos. Unless I'm totally disoriented here. I'm going to have to advance my slide. No, I'm right. So instead of taking the shortcut, we decided to walk out to the river overlook. Turned out to be a really good move. This is the mouth of Asbestos Canyon. I mean, there's all kind of crazy, interesting stuff going on here. This is the boulder field downriver from Hance Rapid. This would be, I guess, back in here where New Hance Trail is going. This must be Mineral Canyon. There it is again. This is speaking of the Tomasi brothers, this is their preferred route to, this would be what, Solomon Temple, Tom? Yeah. And this is Sheba, I guess. So this is Solomon. And if you're going for either of these, their approaches, once you're at the point where I'm taking this photo, their approaches, just go straight down and go right up there, boom, you're there. Now, we were not going to do that. This is Hance Creek, looking across at Hance Creek here. So this is kind of fun. Just seeing all this stuff from a totally different perspective. Hance Rapid in the background there. Again. Always, and this is just such a spectacular spot. The wind was whipping like crazy here, but we just hung out here, had lunch, and enjoyed the view. Somewhere down here is the trail that leads to the Asbestos mine and takes you back to the rapids. And there is Vishnu Temple. I guess Jane's making sure I see it. So now we're headed into Asbestos, and it's, again, nice steep side hilling stuff. Now, I'm so disappointed, as we all are, that there's too much light in the room, but the middle section of Asbestos is really tortured, and it's just kind of an interesting thing, because lower Asbestos, it's one thing, then there's a bypass, which I haven't done, gets you into this middle section here, and then if you're up on the Tonto, it's not as easy as you might hope to get down into this middle section. Here we are again looking, and this is why it's not so easy. You see the drop-off? So you're up here hiking, and there are ways to get eventually down in there, but it's a little more tricky. So we stopped in there. Time for a stretch. That's Jane doing some yoga or something there. I don't know what it is. But once again, water. So we said we're going to camp here. Now, at first, you'll love this. So, think about planning ahead. Hey, we're right by water on Slick Rock. Let's just pitch our tents right here. It won't rain or anything. So we were all set up, and Jane had pitched her tent on this, I don't want to pick on her, but she had pitched her tent on this nice, flat, sandy spot that was nice and comfy. And then after she pitched it, before much time had passed, she was kind of looking at it and said, I wonder why it's all sandy there. And then she looked closer and realized that was where the water came, so she moved. And we both moved our tents out of the water flow area, which it did rain, so that was a good thing. Anyway, this is why we turned around short of Unkar. The weather was coming in. I thought it was pretty cool with all the clouds. This is the next morning, I'm pretty sure. You can see the clouds. The rain had fallen overnight, more water everywhere now. That's my tent, and it's overcast. The clouds are welling up out of the canyon. It snowed some, it rained some, more of the same kind of thing. Gorgeous, though. I mean, I'm afraid these pictures don't do justice to the beauty of this sunrise, because these big clouds of fog, I guess, were just rolling through and passing in front of the red wall. It was glowing orange with the sunrise, and it was really quite spectacular, but it was a warning to us that maybe the weather was changing. So we went back to the overhang camp and just hung out. The next day, it rained, then it snowed, then it rained. The temperature at noon was 32, and we basically just stayed in this camp, and because it's an overhang, we stayed dry, and sheets of water were coming straight down into the creek from the overhang all day long. And I finished the entirety of Master and Margarita by Bulgakov and started it again because I had nothing else to read. And it was that kind of day. But, hey, it was still a great time. So then, having turned back early, we had an extra day. So here we are now. The sun came out the following day. So now this, I hope you can tell, this is a ridiculous spot to be in. I'm exposure averse. That's a nice drop-off there. This is in Vishnu, below the overhang camp on the way downstream towards the river. And there's a lot of ways to get through here. One of them happens to be to kind of skirt around on this little ledge and then climb down through some of these formations and get us down into the bed of Vishnu. Earlier I showed a picture, talked about how Dennis had mentioned a cabin, and I showed a picture of Big S Bend in the creek. That picture was taken from right up here, and then this is going to be the S Bend that we were looking at before. So we're on the trail of that cabin. There's some of the conglomerate formation that's part of the supergroup there. You see a close-up of that. And continue on down, and there's a chimney hiding in the trees on the left side of the creek, and there's the old cabin. Quite a delightful thing to discover. There's some artifacts, kind of hard to tell, but there's a sort of broken off shovel and pans and cans and every other kind of debris that you find at these kind of sites. Now, I should say that when I saw this and the creek bed was still dry, I thought to myself, well, that's great that there's a cabin here, but Vishnu is not perennial. What's the guy's water source? Well, 20 feet in the other direction, there's a spring that comes out right there. So there's his water source. And so from here to the river, Vishnu flows, I guess, pretty much all the time. And it's just a typical kind of close to the river hike. There's a gorgeous waterfall partway down, and there's a bypass. So there's the waterfall, there's Jane up on the bypass, easily enough bypassed. And you finally get into this sculpted, Vishnu and Zoroaster granite, inner canyon stream bed, which is really pretty and worth the thing. Here's where we turned around. There was a little pour off here. We decided not to try it. So we got this far and said that's the end of the line today, and headed back. So that was kind of a meaningful accomplishment to finding that cabin and exploring down towards the river as well. The next day, the weather came back. It snowed some more. It was cool, and I don't know if it was because we were smelling the barn, as they say, or because of the coolness, or because our packs were 10 pounds lighter. But we did make it from Vishnu all the way back to Clear Creek in a day with time to spare, retracing our steps, going back exactly the same way we had come, even though it took us a day and a half coming over. And here, I think this probably is my final photo. It had snowed, obviously, so the scenery is just gorgeous. There's Jane kind of looking to the west, headed back around the Howlands Butte and back towards Clear Creek. And there, I guess that's my closing shot. There's Jane headed back down the Yak route, and that's the east arm of Clear Creek. And that completed our hike. That was 10 days in about 20 minutes. So that's the hike.